Assassin's Creed Shadows represents the long requested arrival of Assassin's Creed to feudal Japan, and with that comes high expectations. After 30 plus hours in the game and plenty more still left to uncover, I can confidently say that Shadows ranks among my favorite Assassin's Creed titles ever. It is undeniably, though, the most fun I've had in an Assassin's Creed ever, bar none. Shadows represents the best the series has ever looked. It's the best the series has ever played, and it showcases some of the best writing, dialogue, and pacing the series has ever shown. The extra time spent in bringing this game to launch has certainly paid off because even with time spent reviewing Shadows, I want more. Assassin's Creed has certainly had its fair share of exceptional protagonists. In past games, we've had characters like Ezio, Bayek, and Cassandra being standouts. This time, though, rather than a singular protagonist determined for me, or perhaps a gender-swapped variant of the same character, Shadows has opted to handle its affairs with two protagonists, each having their own tales to tell in an interweaving narrative that makes for a compelling storyline. This dual protagonist approach presented by Shadows offers two different gameplay experiences. One is of stealth and tactics via Naoe, another of heavy combat and brute strength by Yasuke. At first, I found myself a bit trepidatious at this approach, frustrated at my brooding samurai's inability to sneak past guards efficiently, or that my lithe and quick shinobi was unable to fend off large groups comfortably. I found myself confused by these situations. However, through the course of the campaign, I became more adept at scanning the area and making better, more appropriate choices determined by the character that I had. And I understood that I could approach different situations differently, and that made all the difference.
I am fine. This is fine.
It's important to acknowledge that each of these two characters are special in their own way, and they stand out in some ways and blend in others. Yasuke is a black man in feudal Japan adorned with samurai attire and a skill set to match. He stands out. He's a samurai that is stronger, bulkier, and more powerful than those around him. He stands out a bit as a brute, slashing, parrying, using swords, heavy mallets, and bows and arrows, and his use is largely just a very violent affair. The sheer brutality of it is remarkable. He stands out in that way. However, his actual character is far more contemplative, is intelligent, and wise. Naoe is a small woman, adept in the art of shinobi, and yet able to hold her own against powerful, more masculine characters. She stands out as well in many ways, but also is adept at blending in. She's smaller, more lithe, and stealthy as she moves across all types of terrain. She's an assassin. Combat for her is less direct conflict and more in favor of smoke bombs and using the assassin blade, and it makes her quite capable in a number of different situations, but weaker when battling large groups. Each of these two characters' backstories is rich. They're intelligently designed and told in such a way that makes neither feel like a token character made to be different for the sake of being different. Starting off these narratives is a prologue that, while beautiful, is way too long. Early on, it feels like Shadows is so eager to tell you its story that it forgets to let you just play the game. So much exposition early on may prove to be a hindrance for some, but I strongly recommend that those who are bothered with it stick to it, because the game that follows is absolutely incredible. The narrative itself is extremely well written and well acted, with intricate storylines that do a good job at giving justifications to each character's actions. The arrival of our two protagonists into each other's lives is a bit of a MacGuffin, I grant you that, but I appreciated it for what it was. Where I did find frustration, though, was in just how long that extended prologue I spoke of locked me into time with Yasuke, only to exit me from the prologue and then you lock me into time with Naoe. I didn't achieve the ability to switch characters between the two protagonists until something like 12 hours in. Part of that might be my decision making because certain quest lines offer decision making abilities, and therein lies another concern for me, finding out what to do. That wonderful narrative that I spoke of and that I will continue to heap praise for does a great job with character exposition and motivations. But once it's wrapped up, whatever cutscene or mini storyline is telling, it can be a bit of a chore to get back on track. It's this mission design that can be such a benefit and drawback to the Shadows experience. Once I became accustomed to the system, I was fine with it, but the learning curve was steeper than I thought it needed to be. Shadows does provide optional easement to this frustration in a guided pathline of letting players know what to do next, but it does break immersion and it clearly isn't the intended way of enjoying this world. Shadows has a number of objective trees that, for me, were overwhelming. I worked through it because playing the game is just so much fun that it was worth learning, but it does take some doing to figure out where to go next. Visually speaking, this is the best I've ever seen it. I am left astounded. To date, I don't think I've seen better visuals in an open world game on console ever. This world is alive. It showcases nature in a way that feels vibrant, dynamic, and is flourishing despite the violent nature of humans around it. You can see this in so many different aspects of the expertly designed villages and castle areas that capture the architecture of the time. You'll be privy to a day-night cycle that sees the sun and moon move across the sky, casting the appropriate shadows as they move. More than once, I found myself pausing to witness the god rays cascading through the trees, only for a weather system to come in, change everything, with clouds rolling across the sky, leaves starting to blow, and rain beginning to fall. Other times, I'd enjoy traversing the world in a moonlit night during the winter, and a slight snowfall would turn into a blizzard. That's another incredible element that makes this world feel more alive than static. Seasonal changes. Each season has a visual impact on the world, and it is astounding. To see the world in fall with a swath of colors in the trees and the leaves falling, it's absolutely incredible with all types of weather and lighting. But then it's completely different in the wintertime with snow. And in the springtime, flowers are in bloom. Another new swath of colors is there. I was awestruck. I've not seen this in a game that'd be so clearly intentional and yet not be the primary focus of the game. This is Assassin's Creed, and yet it's implementing the best combination of weather systems, day-night cycles, and seasonal changes that I've ever played in any game, ever. Worth noting, there's wildlife throughout the world that makes the area feel more alive as well. Deer, raccoons, cats, dogs, and other little critters. Guinea pigs are there. They have their minds of their own. They react to one another and to the world brilliantly. You'll stumble across animals that are fighting or scurrying about. They'll react to you, they'll react to your horse, and it's hard not to be impressed. There are opportunities for your character to stop for a moment and paint some of these scenes, and it's another unnecessary but appreciated sense of detail that I fell in love with. Again, this is Assassin's Creed, but it feels like it's Assassin's Creed evolved. For all my talk of visual design, I also want to point out the audio. It's beautiful. Traditional Japanese instruments and flutes, I think they're flutes or something like it, accompany emotional moments with the appropriate levels of ambiance and compassion. One thing that Shadows does well, and does an exceptional job of, is making sure that the musical silence also accompanies the player, which leaves room for the world to be heard. Bugs, birds, and other wildlife can be making themselves known, while the sound of leather, armor, and horse hooves can be heard when appropriate. Audio pauses and musical upticks timed perfectly with camera movements, it all helped me buy into the fact that these characters are invested into a very real world. Ambient noise allowed us to hear villagers having conversations as we moved through villages. We could hear running streams of water at a distance, and as we approached, the water became more prominent as a waterfall cascaded. And you would hear villagers or different people throughout the world completing tasks as though we were just passing through. As the combat is so often weapon-based, the sound of these weapons and the grunts of those wielding them are crucial to the experience. Metal on metal, metal on armor, and metal on bone all combine the blood effects to truly showcase the precision and the brutality of the combat involved. Dodging, parrying, and slow-motion violence comes into full effect the more your character levels up their specific abilities. Visual indicators kick in to let you know whether an attack can be blocked, parried, or requires dodging. I found myself enjoying the combat a great deal, though I did get too comfortable at times, and I put myself in some tense situations that resulted in some silly deaths. What's nice, though, is those deaths were my fault versus something odd like a camera angle or unfair AI. That's a good thing and a credit to Shadows. I think there may be a skill gap for some involved here. There are a number of accessibility options and difficulty sliders that can be made use of. I am terrible at QuickTime events, and I truly despise them. I set them to autocomplete, and I just enjoyed the game. That's exactly what accessibility should be, and I appreciated that it was not a hindrance to my enjoyment. Those QuickTime events aren't all that common. Special katas can be practiced to provide skill points for Yasuke, or memories of old skills can be recalled as Naoe plays her music. It's neat, and I'm glad that I didn't have to do it, and I wasn't punished for it. So it goes. Each of these characters can carry 2 weapons, and you have the ability to choose these in an inventory menu. Shadows does a good job at making these loadouts manageable, but also allowing for gear and skills to make for a more unique experience to your liking. I found myself partial to the sword for each character and not using much else, but there are many options to choose from, and each of them have their own abilities, animations, and styles that truly showcase the talent of the teams involved. This combat, I will say it again and I will keep at it. It's brutal, it's violent, it's tense, and it's awesome. I loved it. During combat, there were also some cool moments shown where a special ability can be activated. The camera turns black and white, and you see a more stylized execution, which is very cool. But Yasuke also has this cool Spartan kick, and I absolutely abuse that. Soldiers and bandits prowl the land with varying types of weapons to make up your enemy list. There are, of course, targets for your assassinations that have their own individual flares, but otherwise, it's a pretty standard affair of enemies with various weapon types throughout. Some are fodder, but most require thought and thinking into taking down. Bandits are different than soldiers, but for the life of me, I did not pick up on many visual differences between them. And maybe that's just my eyes, but I killed everybody. I don't know, they looked at me funny and I was like, well, combat's fun, here we go. Sneaking into compounds, disabling alarms, it was all there, and I can't say enough how each one of them felt unique and worthy of my time. It was a blast. It's actually my favorite part of the entire experience, to sneak in, pick off enemies one by one until I inevitably fail, and it's time to go to work on the mobs. I loved it. There are also some kind of medium bosses throughout the worlds, which are really neat. Brutes that have heavier weapons and specialized kill squads that can come after you. It gives me a lot to explore, and even in my 30 plus hours with the game, I was still having a blast. This is the best Assassin's Creed game I have ever played. It's the best the franchise has ever been, and frankly, it's not one to be missed. Please consider subscribing and dropping a like and supporting XEP as we are continuing to expand our coverage to Xbox adjacent content and hardware. That's going to be it for me. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Take care.